Hi there. In this video, I'm going to provide what I think might be an original argument for the Trinitarian concept of God from love. I say original tentatively because I'm not sure. Let me know if this argument has been used before, and I'm aware that while there are arguments from love for the existence of God, I don't think this one has been used before. My argument basically boils down to this. Bear with me, please, here. 1. The source of love can't just be an inherent part of a human's intrinsic nature without God, because it's required that love is 1. Eternal. 2. For something to inherently be the source of love, it has to be love, therefore must encapsulate love completely, reflecting the whole of it in all simplicity. That is, there must be a giver, receiver, and the relationship between giver and receiver. Obviously, a human is not eternal and can't comprise being a giver, receiver, and a relationship only of oneself. Also, it would be quite egotistical for a man to claim himself to be the source of love. 2. Love always requires these two things: expression to be fulfilled, and it must exist in a relationship. Love doesn't exist outside of relationships. 3. In action is love's expression fulfilled. The action of love is the most valuable love, and is therefore required to fulfill or complete love. 4. On the Trinitarian concept of God, the action of love is clear, as well as the fact that we have a relationship in the Trinity, as has been given to us from St. Augustine, i.e., the Father gives love to the Son receives the Father's love, and the Holy Spirit is the love that flows between them. 5. However, on the Unitarian concept of God, love was not fulfilled until he acted in creation. Therefore, God's love is dependent on creation in order to be fulfilled. But Christianity teaches God does not require creation or creatures to be fulfilled. Moreover, on the Trinitarian concept of God, what was this relationship in eternity? 6. On the Unitarian concept of God, of love first acting in creation or starting a relationship with creation is also the implication that love changed and grew greater, but love is unchanging. Therefore, the concept of eternal, unchanging love is flawed than the concept of the Unitarian God. Now, on the point of love never changing, my thoughts are love never changes, therefore it's eternal. For whatever doesn't change has to be eternal, for if there's a point of the existence or reality of something coming into being, that implies a change is involved. But if something is eternal, no such change is involved because it was there already. An eternal state of existence has always been, if anything is eternal. Only love is eternal, and Christians can note God is love. Anything else that is eternal draws its eternality from love. At least I would argue that, but I won't get into all that in this video. Now, Christians believe love is inherent to God's intrinsic nature, but what if an atheist said the same of a creature, that love is inherently part of a person's intrinsic nature? It's just there in a person. This is sort of saying love exists as a brute fact. But as I said, the source of love, or just love, can't be an inherent part of human's intrinsic nature without God, because it's required that love is 1. Eternal, 2. I'll repeat for something that 2. I'll repeat, for something to inherently be the source of love, it has to be love, therefore must encapsulate love completely, reflecting the whole of it in all simplicity. That is, there must be giver, receiver, and the relationship between giver and receiver. A human cannot be a giver and a receiver, and really it is the heights of egotism of a person where to say they are the source of love, which is where the Trinity is involved, obviously, which I've already said in terms of giver, receiver, and the relationship of love. Now, the Unitarian might say love doesn't necessarily have to require a relationship with God. It's just inherently part of his intrinsic nature. Love was always complete and perfect in God, just like that, not dependent on the external factor of creation, which of course didn't exist when there was only God. However, if there wasn't a giver of love, a receiver of love, and the relationship of love, that would mean love hasn't always been expressed. There would have always been an intention to love through creation, but not the expression of love. And I submit that in order for love to always have been complete and fulfilled, there always would have to be an expression of love. Love requires expression. Challenge that if you will, but I think it's rather silly to. The Unitarian might say God always had the thoughts of love through intending to create. Can we suppose thoughts of love are in some ways expressions of love? Perhaps, but what's the greater love, the thought or action of love? The action of love, of course. The action of love would always have had to be in place for love to have been complete and fulfilled in its expression. The thoughts of love don't suffice to fulfill love perfectly. Action is required. If the Unitarian thinks the action of love is not greater than the thoughts and words of love, I would say what is better to wish a beggar a blessing for food and clothing for the day, or to give a beggar food and clothing for that day. So love requires expression, absolutely perfect expression in God's case. Perhaps the Unitarian will say God has always been upholding eternity through the action of love. We can say perhaps we can perhaps say that, but I don't think that action suffices, because who was he demonstrating the action to? Just himself? I think the Unitarian has to say complete love doesn't require action, which is where I think he is wrong. But here's the other problem for the Unitarian. As love is willing the good of the other, and as God is love, or in the Unitarian concept, at least as love, or love is intrinsically part of his nature, God would always have been interested in willing the good of the other, and as God is all powerful, God always would have been acting on that will. For not to be acting in love when one is capable of doing so is not to love. But it seems to me then there was a time when God wasn't acting in love. Now the Unitarian will say God's waiting for the correct time to act in his infinite wisdom. But even if that's the case, the previous point stands. As action was delayed, the Unitarian seems to have to submit the action of love is not required for the complete fulfillment of love. Or if he thinks it is required, then it seems like creation is that action of love. Therefore, in the Unitarian model or concept of God's perfect love is it's dependent on creation. But God's intention to act, waiting in his perfect timing to create, isn't enough to fulfill love because there is a delay between intention and action. The action always has to have been in place and perfectly expressed for love to always have been fulfilled. Of course, this is fulfilled on the Trinitarian concept of God. The Unitarian concept of love is flawed, it would seem, because love couldn't have been existing in a relationship since eternity. And at the point of creation, love must have changed from no relationship to a relationship with creation. Whereas on the Trinity, the relationship was always there in the three persons. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I'd be really interested if any thoughts you'd like to leave in the comments, and please share the video as well. I think this topic deserves to be more discussed, and I'm sure I haven't done it justice. Because as far as I can tell, the Unitarian concept of God is incompatible with love as an eternal, unchanging thing. Of course, I haven't covered everything. If atheists want to say love is a product of evolution, they're free to posit as such. Of course, they'll have to at least admit then that love is not eternal. And the other problem would be that whatever is the source of love has to encapsulate love completely and reflect the whole of it in all simplicity, which I'm simply not seeing from an evolutionary perspective. Perhaps I can discuss that more in another video, though. Thanks for watching. Bye now.